everyone, it's Lisa from My Dreaming Soap. Welcome back to my channel. Now I thought it was about time that we did another You Can Make This soap. So today we're going to do a mini drop swirl. So what I've got on the table here is some squeeze bottles. I like these fairly small squeeze bottles. They take about 250 millilitres and that's going to be fine. Obviously, depending on if you've got a much bigger mould or if you want to use fewer colours. So just make sure that you calculate with your soap how much you're going to be splitting off. Make sure it's going to fit nicely in your squeeze bottles. Now for this soap, I'm going to do some mini drops that are at the top of the soap, but I also want some to be separate from that top design and to be actually dropping separately through the soap. So if you want to do that, you need to extend the nozzles on your squeeze bottles. Okay, so the best way to do that is to get yourself some pipettes. Now, typically most of us have already got these. And when you do this, just keep reusing these. Anytime you want to redo a technique like this, just make sure you've washed these up and keep reusing them. There's no need to throw them away. So you want to just chop off your pipettes, roughly the same size of each other. Another way with this is I find that if you've used some pipettes for measuring something out, like a fragrance oil or an essential oil or something, and you're a bit worried that you can't really get them clean enough and you're nervous about using them again, this is a good way because you can really get these bits of the pipette lovely and clean. So, you know, there's always other uses rather than just using them once and throwing them away. Okay, so I've got 3 pipette tubes and 3 squeeze bottles because those are going to be the 3 accent colours I want. So all we're literally going to do is take them and stick them with some tape onto our squeeze bottles. Now I find the best sort of tape to be using is this, we call it electrical tape over here. I'm not sure if that's where everyone calls it the same. In whatever country you're in. It's this tape that's actually pretty flexible. It's very common to find in any DIY shop. It's better than the normal sort of sellotape type, you know, the more brittle tapes, because it bends and moves and will just hold your little nozzles on the end. Now, if you just want the mini drops on the top of your soap, you know, and you don't want any separate from that design, well, you don't need to go through and do this because this just top will be fine on its own. But I want some separate ones, so I am going to do it. Don't go overboard with your tape. You don't need too much on. Just a little bit on will be fine. And just get those stuck on. And then the other thing to consider is how big do you actually want your droplets to be? Can you see if you just have the very end of your squeeze bottle like that, it's going to be a very small droplet. It will obviously depend on how hard you squeeze. If you want bigger droplets, you want to trim that back and get a bigger amount exposed. I'm going to stay with the little one, and then you can see in my finished bar how small a droplet that gives you, and then you can decide whether you want bigger ones, and as we said, just cut further back on that little nozzle there. Okay, so those are squeezy bottles done. So for additives today, I'm going to be using bergamot and tarragon leaves, and this is from Nature's Garden. Obviously, you can get it directly from Nature's Garden. If you're in the UK, you can get it from Sell the Smells. And then micas, I seem to be having a bit of a Mica Mama day today. So these are all from Mica Mama. I've got Red Riot and Neon Purple. And I'm actually going to combine those together to get myself a nice magenta colour. Red Riot's a mica, Neon Purple is a neon. I know that sounds obvious, but we're going to talk about how that affects how you need to mix these up. And then Antique Silver and Emerald Shimmer, those, as we said, all from Mica Mama. And then I'm also going to be using some titanium dioxide. So for my colourants, I've dispersed the amount of titanium dioxide that's in my assessment for me to use that. And then as you can see, the neon purple and the red riot, it's not a red, it's more of a pinkish red. It is a lovely colour. I've put those two together. I use them sort of 50-50 in my rate. I do use slightly less of the neon purple. So in here, I've got 0.4 grams of neon purple and 0.5 grams of the terracotta red. Now I know that sounds really fussy, but as you know, me being in the UK, I have to weigh and use exactly the right quantities of things. But I do always think it is useful to weigh the amount of mica that you use, because if you weigh that and note it down and you create a brilliant colour, or if you create a colour that you don't like, you know what you did, so therefore you can always repeat it. If you're always just sprinkling in bits of mica into your soap batter, we know that funny things can happen during saponification, so it's always a bit of a guessing game. So if you know the amounts you use, it's a bit of a pain at first, isn't it? Keep writing it down, but you soon get a nice database of all your colours. Okay, so there's my antique silver in here. And then my emerald shimmer, I've just popped that in a separate little pot because that's what I'm going to use for my main base of my soaps. So for me, I'm always going to pre-disperse my micas. So I just dribble in a little bit. For me, my base oils, again, just because of the way we have to do things in the UK, we can't just randomly add extra stuff in. You could disperse these in any lightweight oil. So typically something like olive oil would be good because that's more than likely to be the biggest quantity of oil in your recipe. Now your micas are likely to mix in very nice and easily, so you can just gently stir those in. I just put sort of a minimum amount of oil in here that I can get away with to get a sort of pasty consistency, and just make sure I've really stirred that round well, and I've got no dry bits of mica. And that's that one done. Same with my antique silver. I've done these directly into the jugs that I'm using because then it saves washing up. And I know, as I say, because I know the rates that I want to use, I can safely disperse those. And again, another reason for dispersing them first is just when you want your soap batter to stay fluid. If you put dry mica into a soap batter that you've already bought to trace or emulsion, sorry, dry batter, I meant to say dry mica, you then have to stick blend that mica in to get it dispersed well, which is extra stick blending after you've got to that phase. And you don't really want to be doing that if you want to keep your soap moving as slowly as possible. Okay, now this one, because this one has got the neon in, it's the same for pigments. These are trickier to mix. We don't change our technique at all, we just make sure that that is not going to be good enough. Okay, just mixing them in like you do a mica, that's not going to be good enough because you're going to get speckles. So you really have to mix it, really pound it. I scrape it around my jug and just make sure I've got it really well mixed. And a good thing to do is to sort of wipe it up the side of your jug, because you're going to mix this all in, and just check and see if it's nice and smooth or if you've got any speckles. If you've got speckles on your jug, you'll get speckles in your soap. Okay, so again, I always think pre-dispersing, especially things like pigments and neons, definitely pre-dispersing them first, because otherwise you're going to have to stick blend them quite a while to get them dispersed properly in your soap. Okay, so I'm smushing this onto my jug. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but I'm quite happy that I've got no speckles left, so I'm happy with that. Also, I'm happy with that colour. That's a nice magenta colour. I'm gonna dull these down a little bit, or with some titanium dioxide, because I don't want it to be a shouty soap. I want it to be quite a calm soap. So, colours mixed. And then my oils, I've melted all my oils down. Now this is a technique that does require a pretty fluid batter to stay nice and fluid. So temperature wise, we want it at the lower range of the temperature that you're happy to work with. And as you can see with mine, at the moment is at 84 degrees Fahrenheit. That's pretty good. I'm going to try and wait for it to go down a little bit more. I always soap between 80 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit, because that's what works for me with my recipe. If I go lower than that, I can end up getting a false trace, and then false trace means you have to muck around with your batter longer, getting rid of the false trace. And also potentially, because I've got quite a lot of butters in my recipe, I could end up with steric spots. Okay, so I've poured out my lye. Now, when I say I've just poured out my lye, I master batch all of my lye. I do a big batch of lye and then I keep it up in sealed bottles safely. I find that works really well because then I can just pour out what I need when I need it. I've got a video on master batching and I'll link that in the description below if you want to see that. Now, my lye was at room temperature, and it was only at 69 degrees Fahrenheit. So therefore I have warmed it slightly just so that I've got in the range that I want. And I do that just by sitting it in some warm water and waiting for it to come up to temperature. So I've got these both at very low 80s. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, we've got this thing about where you have to have your oils and lye within 10% of each other. I'm not saying that that's a thing, because I know a lot of people quite successfully use the heat transfer method, which has completely different ranges for oils and lye. What I'm saying for me is I just like to know the temperature of my oils and lye, and I like to have them at a range where I know exactly how they're going to behave. So for me, mine are always literally within a degree or so of each other, because then I'm in control of what's happening with them. Okay, so here we go. Oils into lye. You do sometimes hear people, when they're talking about pouring the oils into the lye, say you must always add the lye to the oils and not the oils to the lye. It really doesn't matter. If for some reason you'd made up your lye in a bigger jug than your oils, that would be odd, but maybe that's all you had around. It wouldn't matter if you tipped your oils into your lye. I think people get confused with that because of the whole, you add your lye to your water, not your water to your lye when you're actually making up your lye solution. But to be honest, whether you pour your lye solution into your oils or your oil mixture into your lye, you're not going to get anything weird happening. Okay, now this is a technique where I want to have a nice fluid batter, so I'm only going to blend a little bit. Now my stick blender has lots of different speeds on it, and I just blended that at the lowest speed, and I have literally just essentially mixed this soap together. I have not even brought it to emulsion. Now if you're going to do this, please be careful, because if you start mucking around with the soap when it's not emulsified, it can split out again, and then you're going to have separate lye and oils. And I'm not sure how well you can see, but you can see it's not yet at emulsion. Again, I've got another video explaining how you can spot emulsion and everything, and I'll link that. But you can see by looking on the surface, and you can see the swirls of the oil still on there. It's not emulsified, but it is mixed. And that's all right for me, because anytime I use this soap and split it out, I'm gonna keep it mixing so it doesn't have a chance to split. Okay, so now I've blended everything up together. I'm just going to weigh the entire batch. I know the weight of my jug. If you haven't weighed your jugs, then make sure you do that and just keep a list of them somewhere. I actually engrave it on the side of each jug. So I've got the total weight including my jug. I know the weight of my jug, so I'll take that off. And so therefore I've got my total soap weight, which for me is 1814 in this recipe. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep 60% of that as the base, and then I'm going to have the other 40% split off in the other colours. So if I then just do that, I times that by 0.4 to get my 40%, so that's 725. And I want that evenly between my other three colours. So I'm just going to divide that upside down by 3. So I want 241 grams of soap in each one of those little jugs. Right, okay, so I can do that. And can you see, by me just having this mixed soap, all this faddling around with weighing and that, I've got more time to deal with that. Okay, so jug with my colourant and everything. It doesn't matter what's in there. If you're going to be using a spatula and leave it in there, either leave it in there or take it out of there. Don't swap it around halfway through. So at that point, tear it out. I like to have spatula in because then I can, remember, stir this. We didn't get it quite to emulsion, so stir, stir, stir. I'm going to now measure and pour onto that spatula, and that breaks the fall a bit of the batter that goes in, and it stops you getting those little undercurrents of batter which can create air bubbles. So you're going to get a smoother mix by doing that. Okay, so we're going to do that for the other two. Okay, so let's sort these colours out now. So we've already got our colours in at the rate that we wanted, so we can just stir those in nicely. And because we've dispersed them first, stirring in is going to be fine. But again, just keep an eye, drag that batter up the side of your jug, and just, you'll see if there's any streaks or anything if you haven't stirred it in properly. Last one. Stir, stir, stir. There's supposed to be titanium dioxide in here. I haven't put it in yet. Okay, we won't stir that. Right, I deliberately left my titanium dioxide out because I've got this much titanium dioxide to use because of my recipe, but I want to sort of muck around with these colours. I don't want them to, can you see how quite bold and sort of what I would call shouty that is? So I'm just going to use some of my titanium dioxide in here and calm this one down a little bit. So it's a more pastel and not so shouty colour. There we are. I like those better. I'm quite happy with the grey. I didn't put very much grey in. In my recipe, I wanted that to be a gentle grey rather than a full-on dark grey, so I didn't put too much of that in. And then the base. So let's add this emerald shimmer in. Okay, so there's my green, and again it's a little bit shouty for me, so I'm just going to pop some titanium dioxide in there to calm it down. Now this is one of those greens that reacts weirdly with the lye, and it goes that sort of rather yucky olivey colour. You can see it almost sort of starting now to try. So I know what colour it will be, and the fact that it's starting to turn olivey is not what I'm worried about at this moment. I'm more worried about the strength of the colour, how pigmented that colour is, and that I actually want it to be a nice soft colour. Okay, so I think I'm happy with those. I've got a nice sort of softness about everything. I'm going to change my mind just because that's looking a little bit bold. Just a tiny weeny little bit of the white there, just so they seem in the same sort of range as each other. Cool. Okay, and then that leaves me this last little bit of titanium dioxide that I've got left that can just go into my white. There's not very much there, but my recipe's pretty white anyway, so I don't really need much TD to actually make it go super white. And this fragrance oil doesn't discolour either, so I'm not battling against that. Okay, so those are my nice gentle colours that I've got. And can you see, by now, we're still working with a lovely fluid batter, and you can see by now as well, it's harder to tell with the colouring, but by now I'm actually definitely at an emulsion because I've just kept mixing and stirring and taking that process on just through the natural process of carrying on with everything. The green is starting to go a horrible colour. It will come back. Okay. So let's now add our fragrance oil in. Remember to stir it in as you add it, don't leave it sitting there floating on the top. Okay, now at the moment these are definitely emulsified, but can you see there's no trace? And that would be too early to do this design. So don't go back in with your stick blender. I'm a big believer in once you've taken that stick blender out the first time, then you shouldn't go back in with it. The only time I would potentially go back in with it is, let's say one of your colours had thickened up a lot more than the other and you wanted to do a design that needed both batters to be at a very similar consistency. At that point, I would then go back in. What I find is if you now naturally let these come to trace on their own, they will stay at that sort of trace a lot longer. If you stick blend them to the trace you want, you've agitated the soap and it stays agitated and it continues thickening up. So let it gently make its own way to trace and it will gently stay there. And as I say, brush it into trace and it will carry on hurrying up. But we've got other jobs to do, haven't we? We've got to get these in our squeeze bottles. Okay, so we've got to the point now where I'm pretty happy that I've got a light trace. One thing I'm just going to mention here is you may have noticed that I added titanium dioxide to all of my soap and I didn't stick blend it in. I think that's the reason why a lot of people find that titanium dioxide, they say, accelerates their trace, because they actually stick blend it in. Now, if you disperse your titanium dioxide properly, and again, guess what? I've got a video for that. Then you can just stir it in and you don't need to stick blend it. I could guarantee you that even though this has got titanium dioxide in that I've just gently stirred, even if I stuck a stick blender in that now, and I'm not going to do it because I want this to stay thin, that would not get any lighter because I've dispersed my titanium dioxide properly. And I never have a problem with my TD accelerating my trace. I have other micas that accelerate much more than my titanium dioxide does. Okay, so let's get this poured. So I'm going to put this entire base straight in. Again, using that spatula to not break the fall, but to gently get the soap into the mould without it causing undercurrents and therefore adding bubbles to your soap. Okay, I'm going to pop that all in. I'm not going to worry about saving any of this colour for the top because the top's going to be quite colourful anyway with all the other colours on it. So I'm just going to leave this colour on the base. Now when you're going to do a dropper, what you want to do is make sure you fill your dropper up, because you don't want to be squirting a big old air bubble into your soap. So in goes your dropper. You might find it easier to go down to the bottom so you can see where the bottom is, and then just come up a little bit and then just go along and make a squeeze. And then again with my next colour. I'm deliberately trying to get it in sort of the same place. And then again. And then my white. Now obviously the harder you squeeze at this point, the bigger your droplets are going to be. So I'm just going to now carry on and just add some droplets, not quite so deep, in. Okay, I think that's going to be enough for my deep droplets, as it were. So I now just want to do the rest of the soap. So what I'm actually going to do, and this is why it's good not to put too much tape, is I'm going to get rid of those long old nozzles. Okay, so now we're just going to complete the rest of the design. Give them a nice shake, and then just start adding in your droplets. And we are squeezing below the soap first of all. I like to put some directly on top of the other because you then get one droplet inside another, and that always looks really cool. And I'm just laying my bottles down because the less time I can have the soap going back up the bottle and causing air bubbles, the better. Okay, and as I do my droplets, I'm not necessarily just going to keep the bottle straight. I'm going to go in at all different angles, because then that will give us a cool effect too. And then what you want to do is gradually just let those bottles start coming up. Okay, so you're not all the time squirting into the top of the soap and actually going below the surface, you do start to come more towards the top of this soap. As your batter starts to get to the stage where it won't pour out of your squeeze bottle on its own, then set it upside down in a jug. Now as you do the top, just be very careful not to go too deep into your design below. And then I'm going to do like just a wiggly up. Right then folks, I am going to cover this. I don't spray with rubbing alcohol. I find rubbing alcohol, certainly for me, makes no difference to if I get soda ash or not. I'm lucky, I don't tend to get much soda ash where I live, but my humidity is, certainly the last couple of days, has been up at 97%, and I've made several soaps and still not got soda ash. So I do a nice deep water discount on my soap. I cover it with the lid, but I also seal the lid with some plastic wrap, and you can see this is just a piece I've used again and again. Seal that in. And what happens is as I pop this, the heat of the oven, it won't melt this cling wrap, but what it does is it sort of softens it enough that it does make it sort of form nicely around the mould and give you a nice airtight seal. If you get a lot of soda ash, think about water discount, think about covering your soap, and also do not uncover it until saponification has finished. So for those of you who get lots of soda ash, that may mean, I know it's really painful, you want to leave that soap in the mould for at least 2 days, and do not uncover it at all, because your soda ash will still be developing in that sort of 1 to 2 days. So leave it for 2 days and then unmold it. I know it's hard, but you'll get a much better result. Okay, so I'm going to pop this into the oven, 170 F, 70 degrees C. I pop mine into the oven and turn the oven off straight away, put the oven light on, and then just leave it there, sort of overnight, as it were. Hi everyone, welcome back. So here's our soap. This is actually nearly a couple of days later, just because yesterday we were out and about, so I didn't get time to cut the soap during daylight, so we just waited a bit. Now I'm just laying this one down, just because it's a tall and skinny. I just find it easier to actually lay the soap down to cut it rather than have it upright. Just fits nicely on the cutter. Okay, so let's have a look at what we've got. Let's just take some ones from the middle. So we've got a nice little pretty top, and let's have a look inside. There we go. Oh, I'm really pleased with this. And can you see what I said to you about trying to drop one colour on top of another? I love the way here, look, you've got that one almost coming out of the bottom of it. Look how pretty that is. And then you've got here, you've got the one colour right inside the other. And again, up the top, just trying to sometimes angle that squeeze bottle so you've got the drips and that going all over the place, and then the little ones coming out of the bottom. I'm really pleased with how that's come out, and the colours have come out just as I wanted them. I like the fact that that green's a nice pastel colour as well as the others. Not too shouty, as I was saying yesterday. Okay, so let's have a look at a few more of those. And you can see this one looks a little bit more rainy, doesn't it? More little individual drops. So can you remember what I said I was saying about the squeeze bottle as well? I didn't trim the end of my squeeze bottle little pipettes. Remember those extensions we put on? I didn't trim that down. So you see, I gave it a reasonable squeeze, but I didn't squeeze too hard. And can you see it gives us these nice little delicate drops? If you run the bottle along a little bit slower and squeeze a bit harder, you do get some slightly larger drops. And obviously if you'd squeezed your squeeze bottle and trimmed that top, you would have got some bigger drops. But I kind of like these small ones that we've got. Okay, so again, more similar sort of thing. Just grab a couple more, then we'll just look at some final photos. So there we are, and again we've got some more of those by trying to aim the bottle inside. Can you see here, look, we've got the drops. These are my favourite bits, where you've got a drop going inside of a drop, where you've just literally poured directly on top of the bit that you poured before. And look at that one. Perfectly lined up. I would say that I did that on purpose. I tried to do it, obviously, but it was a bit of a fluke because you can't really see exactly how deep you are. So quite lucky there with that. But yeah, that. Okay, folks, so hopefully you'll have a go at this technique. If you can get your trace right, it's not a difficult technique to do, and it's so much fun, and it does give you, as you can see, some really beautiful soaps. And then I'll just leave you with some final photos of the soap. I hope you've enjoyed this video and you like the soap. If you have, it would be great if you gave me a thumbs up. If you'd like to see what I'm making in the future, then why not subscribe to my channel? And if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, everyone. Happy soaping!